Hello, and I will formally welcome everybody to our monthly free webinar where we take a look at organizational situations and challenges and try and provide some insight, some perspective, some strategies in order to address them. This month, we're going to be taking a look at not just professionalism, but modern day professionalism. And I like the way that we couched this because professionalism is one of those things that might definitely change over time. My name is Joe Jotkowitz. I'm with the Executive Advisory. I'm a consultant. We do training, development, executive coaching, leadership development, organizational development, assessment, climate survey, culture survey, just about anything in that professional development space. Now, I'll ask my colleague, my co-host here, to also introduce herself before we go ahead and jump into this.
Hello, everyone. I am Gerri Brehm, and I also work at the Executive Advisory, doing all the things that Joe just said. So we're happy to have you here, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jared. I'm glad that we were able to have this discussion. I probably have a little bit of a personal attachment to the concept of professionalism. I do remember early in my career, it was a concept that was shared with me pretty early on. As a matter of fact, when we talk about professionalism, I did a little bit of research beforehand, and the term professionalism really started to gain more and more notoriety around the 50s or so, which does harken back to some imagery, at least for me, Mad Men came to mind when I started thinking about professionalism and the 50s. Not that that's the way we'll be talking about it today, but it does have a little bit of an old school type of feel at times. When we talk about professionalism today, really what we're focusing on is what it is that represents that expected work conduct or behavior in the workplace. It is more than just say rule compliance, so to speak. I remember my very first introduction to professionalism, and it really was more about attire at the time, the way that I was dressed. Was my shirt ironed? I remember hygiene. My hair had to be a certain length and it couldn't go down past my collar. I remember things like handshakes being commented on. Did I have a firm handshake in order to show up as a professional? But now the idea of professionalism really is, it's much broader. It takes into concepts such as emotional intelligence. Do I have the ability to recognize and understand the situation? Adaptability, being able to adjust and flex accordingly, maybe even inclusivity. How do I show up and make sure that everybody is involved, is included? So when we take a look at this idea of modern day professionalism, it really does take into account stuff around our physical office environment, plus the world that we work in today, which really is around digital spaces, video conferencing, Slack, LinkedIn. And you mix in some of that with the varied cultural backgrounds and experiences that people bring to the table. I think formality really tends to take a little bit of a back seat here to integrity or consistency. Gerri, I'll just briefly ask you your take when you see professionalism before we go ahead and jump into this.
Yeah, I think we're going to be covering it in the workshop today, but it is that, as you said, that shift from, you know, do you look a certain way to how are you showing up? And, even the markers that you were calling out, like your hair being a certain length and a pressed shirt, a lot of those things were gendered. It's like
Mm.
males could easily check a box for this is what professional looks like, and then women had a completely different standard they were trying to fit within. So it gets I'm glad that it's started to shift in different ways, but some of those mindsets still exist with people of the first thing I see is what I'm judging your professionalism on.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, Gerri, I think it was a post that you did not too long ago, and you called out Carol Mosley Braun.
Yeah.
She was a former uh, um, a congressperson from
Mhm.
Illinois. I
Yeah.
was going to college in Illinois at the time when her popularity came up, and I'd always admired her. Do you mind if I ask you to reference what you were calling out in the post?
Yeah, I was just talking about some of the shifts that we have feel like, well, of course women wear pantsuits, but this was actually pretty new. I mean, Karen Mosley Vaughn was wearing them in Illinois Senate. It's like it was not a big deal for her to show up in office in a pantsuit. She did not know by going to the US, to the Capitol, that that was a no-go, that she was not allowed to wear pants. Now, technically, I guess on the books they couldn't say no, but
Mhm.
that was not the standard. And so she was, harshly criticized for
Mhm.
that. But then there was this swift kind of shift over to, yeah, of course women can wear pantsuits. But it's just been, I think, in the last I think the last 20 years, even some courtrooms, women who were attorneys couldn't wear pants or slacks. So it's like there's still these pockets of what I'm judging somebody on for professionalism. And again, what we take for granted in many locations in terms of the comfort or the relaxed kind of demeanor that we get to be in doesn't necessarily hold for different pockets that might still be, male dominated.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really like the idea of, as we take a look at professionalism and kind of how it has shifted. For purposes of our conversation, we're going to take a look at it really not, like I said before, not as a rigid set of rules on how you are expected to show up, but really it's more of a mindset. And this mindset begins at early stages of our career and really moves through the life cycle of our professional career. So first, it usually starts with this entry point, and what we don't always realize is our professionalism gets projected from the moment that we start to apply. You're taking a look at our resume or the way that we even follow up, moving into becoming more of a junior professional, where now we've got to be able to take a seat at the table. We've got to be able to have a perspective. Then we become a mid-level professional or maybe even a manager at this point. And here we're really viewed as a conduit between some of the more junior levels and senior levels. And how do we manage that all the way up to a seasoned leader where it's really all about collaborating as opposed to say just cooperating or coordinating? Are we looking out horizontally as opposed to just vertically within our own business unit? And then ideally all the way up to being an executive where we're really setting the tone, where people really are looking at us in order to get a sense of culture and expectation. So we're going to take a look at different different levels of professionalism at each stages of our career here. And Gerri will go ahead and kick us off as we take a look at the walking through that door of our entry point.
Yeah. So thank you, Joe. I think, one of the things we like to think about is how are you setting new hires up for success? And I think it's really easy. And this is where being a seasoned employee, I've been around since Gen X entered the workforce. And head banging and hair pulling about this next generation that's coming in and they're going to ruin everything. How do you set people up for success? So as they come in the door, whether it's as an intern or as Joe says, just those touch points at the beginning of their career, are they being set up for success? What's it mean, even go to dress, like what's dress code at this organization? And that can be varied. So making sure that, they don't have to stock the building to see how do people dress when they come and go from the company. And beyond that, that sense of, what are our cultural norms? How do we tend to get work done here? And that even, goes over to what are our communication norms? How do we get messages across to each other? Is this an organization that if you're invited into a meeting, regardless of your title, you're supposed to have a voice and an opinion? Or is this an organization that says, nope, you sit quietly on the side, you're here for gathering data only? And just having that stuff clarified, because we can judge anybody coming into the workforce for not understanding things. But I grew up with landlines, but you show up at a business and I didn't know how to use a multi-line system. I didn't know how to put anybody on hold. That wasn't the way my home phone worked. So we have these expectations of a generation coming in now, and what have they been exposed to? So it's ridiculous to hold them to a standard that they've never even had a chance to work with or experience before, which goes to my next bullet here, which is that understanding generation next. And again, I mean, if we're lucky, there's always going to be a new generation of employees entering the workforce. That the company will exist or the world exists. There's going to be a new generation of people. And I think it is that openness to understanding whatever they come in with. Yes, you might see, oh, they don't understand how to do this, or they seem to do it differently, or they're weird. Whatever your mindset is of who's coming through the door, they're bringing something to your organization that now gives you insight into a generation of your consumers, potentially who you're going to sell to. So this sense of what am I learning from them, and that it's not just a one way. They need to learn how to use our email system. They need to learn how to use our Slack. They need to know how to dress in this room. It's what am I learning from them? And I think as entry point people, the faster that they can get acclimated into those things, the easier it is for them to potentially go to the next phase that Joe's going to be talking about, which is I understand how things work here, and there's a really clear definition of what success looks like.
Yeah, there's really a lot that we can do as managers, as leaders, especially when people are entering the organization, or to ramp them up and ideally create an environment where they can succeed. If we do that well, hopefully they continue to grow, develop, maybe even become a junior professional. And here, professionalism, the expectations, they start to adjust a little bit. Now ideally I've been in the organization for a little. I kind of get it. I understand it. I'm starting to see where things are working, how things are clicking, and ideally I can start to contribute a little. So here I've got to be able to take my seat at the table, so to speak. And do I have a point of view? There is a point in our career where people want to know that we've got a point of view, we've got a perspective. I remember early in my consulting career, I actually had this presented to me. I was in Chicago at the time, and I'd been with a client team the entire week. And as I was walking out towards the airport, I remember that the managing partner who led the firm called me into his office and said, "You've been working with my team all week long. I'm curious. What did you learn about them? What is it that you know that would be helpful for me?" And it was one of the first times that I started to realize, as a professional, there is an expectation that I've got a perspective on things. And I've got to be able to not only share that, but also back it up. It's the ability to share that in a clear, concise manner, the ability to say, here's what I think, and here are the reasons why. Or here's what's going on with fill in the blank, and here are the items that you need to know in order to understand it. It's being able to have that confidence to share that view. In addition, do so in an organized fashion where other people walk away and they feel informed as well. In addition, at this stage of our career, it's not just sharing information that's important. It's also the ability to answer questions in a direct and succinct manner. This, unfortunately, is where I do see, especially at this stage in our career, where unfortunately we might start to falter a little bit. As a matter of fact, there was an example that came to mind when I was preparing for this webinar. I was working with a young junior executive, very, very smart, very, very intelligent. He just got done delivering an absolutely flawless presentation to his team, to his leadership team, and to a couple of the clients on the engagement team. And after giving this phenomenal presentation, he was asked several questions, one of which was, "This is great information. Are you going to be able to get this out to us in a report form before the day is out?" A very simple, straightforward question. And it was an easy opportunity for him to demonstrate his competence, his professionalism. Unfortunately, the answer started to roll out like this: "Well, that's really tough to say. Right now, this week, unfortunately, I've got a lot of other things that I've got to wrap up before I end up finalizing the report. In addition, some of the data, some of the numbers that I shared with you, I still need finance to confirm. So they've got to get back to me. And I know that they are absolutely slammed this week. Maybe if they can do that by next week, then the following week, I can go ahead and take a look at putting those numbers in, making sure that all the calculations are correct, and then shoot that spreadsheet and the rest of these reports out to everyone." If you are still listening to the answer, number one, I'd be surprised. Number two, you might have noticed, unfortunately, the individual didn't exactly answer the question as directly as they could have, and definitely over explained it a bit. As a result, their professionalism faltered. So, some of the things to be mindful of when we are a junior professional is that ability to really take our seat at the table, to have a point of view, to have a perspective, to share it in a clear, concise manner. Here's what I think, and here are the reasons why. And then even respond, answering yes no questions in a yes no manner, as opposed to giving essay dissertations. And when we do that, hopefully our professionalism is recognized, and even those types of skills translate to the next level, that mid-level professional, which Gerri is going to talk through.
Yeah. And I was just with the example you just shared, Joe. I had somebody last week in a workshop talking, we were talking about professionalism actually. And I was calling out that, at this point in your career, you're not being asked to share your homework. We used to have to
Mm.
show how we did all those answers. And at this point, particularly as a mid-level professional, the expectation is you are a subject matter expert. You know what you're talking about in your space. And so you don't have to then show, here's how I got to my answer. They're looking for the answer that helps them make the best possible decision. So one of the things that we found, and even this background, you can see all the stairs going in different directions. This level is really a sandwich situation of you've got to be able to translate what leadership is saying about what they're trying to do, or if they're pivoting, or if there are new priorities. You've got to make that real language for whoever works for you, and how do they actionalize that or put that into the process that they're already doing, or shift on a dime. And so you've got to be that translator of corporate speak. You also have to be able to communicate across different divisions within the organization at this point. So now, again, you're a subject matter expert in your space, but you're going to have an understanding of how my work interacts with everybody else's work. And if I can't talk to them in a collaborative or co-creative kind of way, then things just stall, and we become the thing that's sort of blocking work from getting done. So that kind of ability to respect, even if sometimes we're at cross purposes of like you trying to hit that deadline and me trying to hit my deadline, feels like we're working against each other. How do we then coordinate those efforts to move forward? And then the next one, this piece of I am now the advocate for my people to senior leadership. So how they're performing, are they giving feedback? Am I giving feedback to them? Am I understanding where the hot spots are, where the challenges are, where the learning gaps are? Can I communicate the people who are really emerging in terms of their own leadership capability? Can I communicate that up to my leadership? Because I am sometimes the barricade. They don't get to see that person. They don't have visibility to my directs everyday work. So my job becomes important in terms of being that conduit and being that person who is putting a spotlight on performance. That's a lot to ask for somebody who's in this mid-level portion of their career. They've got to take on a great deal. And what I see, and have certainly felt these last probably 10 years, a lot of folks who are subject matter experts and really hone in on a specific area of their work. They don't want to go somewhere else. They are, that engineer, that artist, that they've got some kind of specialty or expertise, and they don't really want to grow up the ladder. So there's a lot expected of them sitting in that space right there. And we just need to support them in terms of, are they able to do that translation, and are they able to do that advocation and cross collaboration?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's fascinating you bring that up. I was just in a conversation with somebody who at this mid-level, and they're even talking about them moving up to the next level, seasoned leader, which we'll talk about in a second. And one of the comments that he gave me was he appreciates the acknowledgement and the upward trajectory, but every time he does, he finds there's a little piece of him that is that is missing. He continues to move further and further away from the craft, as he says, which is
Yeah.
the original reason why he got into that industry. But yeah, that can be very challenging. So as a result, as you continue to move up, say, the organizational ladder, it's not as if everybody wants to necessarily even become, say, a seasoned leader or an executive. But if you do, then it's also important to understand the expectations around professionalism, they change a little bit. Here now, I'm expected to collaborate a lot more horizontal as opposed to vertical. As a matter of fact, I was in a senior leadership session that I was facilitating around organizational health. And one of the concepts that we started talking about was this concept of called Team One. As a seasoned leader, what do you view as your primary team? And originally, everybody thought, well, as my immediate direct reports, I've got to make sure that I am managing, say, my business. And what their leader was trying to get them to realize is no, everybody around this table, this is our team one. We all need to be aligned. We all need to be coordinated if we are going to lead the people below us. If there is any sort of perspective of division or rivalry here, how can we expect our folks in order to show up professionally, productively? And so I thought that was kind of an interesting shift in mindset, especially at this level when you're starting to talk about professionalism. Here, as a result, too, we got to take a look at being able to navigate conflict. And I very deliberate language here on navigating as opposed to perhaps solving conflicts. Conflict, I don't know if conflict is necessarily solved so much as a seasoned leader, it's probably my responsibility to make sure that it is addressed, it is managed, it's handled, it is navigated effectively. Do I address that? Do I have those difficult conversations? Do I help facilitate those with others in the organization when necessary? Sometimes they say the most important conversations are, in fact, the toughest ones to have. So, as a seasoned leader, do I create a space where that can happen? Perhaps even focusing on psychological safety and making sure that I am being inclusive along the way. As a seasoned leader, I've probably seen quite a bit. I've, at this point, probably got decades worth of experience under my belt, but it's less about me and more about others. What do I do in order to incorporate others into the project, into the solution, into the problem solving? How often am I asking the questions, what do you think? What's your take on this? As opposed to answering those questions. So as we continue to go up the organizational ladder, as our roles and our expectations continue to change, so do those requirements of professionalism. And do we, number one, understand it? Number two, adapt to it at each stage of the game.
Well, I'm gonna just before I go to this one, Joe, I would just going back full circle on the seasoned leader piece is that seasoned leader really the generations that are coming into the workforce now, and this has been sort of late Gen Y and the current Gen Z, they are choosing to work places. They want to work for places. They're fully investing in places when they can see their leadership actually living the values they state this company stands for, or this is how we do the work, or this is why we do the work. Any of that kind of visioning of what they stand for and what their principles are, the workforce coming in, they've got really strong, pardon me, they got really strong BS meters. And so if you're talking up here about something, but you're not living it down in the day to day, you are going to be disengaging those folks. So I think that even goes to, that navigating conflict, as you said, it's not necessarily solving it for anybody, but I think it's also identifying what's productive conflict versus
Mm.
conflict that is shutting people down. And are we really, is that conflict, that productive conflict, moving us towards those values or those principles that we say we stand for?
Yeah, that's a good point. And as a leader, what do I do in order to help navigate that conflict for people, for the organization, so that ideally, yes, we can be productive? Thanks, Gerri.
Yeah. And then I'll just call out that this is what we get called in to do. And I just taught a class last week on this. So there's workshops available on what does professionalism look like. And that's everything from, I've got somebody talking about the idea of athleisure wear, where somebody may have spent a lot of money on the outfit, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right outfit when they are working in a sales environment where somebody might be spending hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars on a product. So this idea of really understanding what does professionalism look like and customizing that for the clients that we have. It's obviously Joe and I get called in, all of our folks in our firm get called in for coaching around that leveling up piece. So somebody might have been promoted, but needs to sort of level up in how they're showing up in that space. Or it's sort of developmental coaching, getting them ready for that next potential opportunity. And then we're brought in for thought partnership in terms of that culture piece of how are you defining what it looks like and how are you communicating that out to your folks in the organization. So we are here to help in all kinds of ways. And please, you can reach out to us individually or through the firm. So we'd love to hear anything from you as well.
Yeah. And as I mentioned at the top of this webinar, we like to do these every month. So we will invite you next month. Please join us. We're going to do a little bit different approach. We are going to share a few of our favorite things in a fun little video. So go ahead and keep your eyes and ears open for that. We
Oh, I was also going
at
to say, and then they should just, if you aren't already, and I think you must be if you found
mm,
us here, check out our LinkedIn. Check out, we've got videos available on YouTube, and each of us will be posting some of our favorite things from the last year or videos that people reached out to us about. So lots of content in terms of articles and resources that you might have missed throughout the year. So it's sort of the best of as we go into the end of 2025.
excellent. Well, thanks, Gerri. It was a fun conversation. I appreciate you spending the time with me.
My pleasure. Like, lovely to see the folks that were able to join us today. And if you are viewing this as a recording, thank you for catching up with us later.
Yeah, we will go ahead and follow up with everybody. We'll send a link out to the recording, as well as the deck that we use. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.